Hey, I'm reading today from our book of the month, Creating a World That Works for All, Chapter 4. Stop blaming others. You are the problem. Wow! Shall we learn a little more? Emptying ourselves of outmoded beliefs. Together, we are writing the script for a world that works for all. To develop this new story, we must be ready to receive new ideas, new insights, new information. The only way we can be open to the new is to empty ourselves of the old, the outmoded, the inappropriate. Zen teachers remind us that just as an already full teacup cannot hold any more tea, a person already full of concepts cannot hold wisdom. Some of our limiting thoughts have been with us for so long, they have become our sacred cows. And as cows do in India, they block the traffic of ideas. But unlike India's cattle, these thought cows have no life independent of our consciousness. Slaughtering them will only make the world better for all. We must root out the fallacies and illusions that create, support, and sustain a world that works only for some. Before European explorers could cross the ocean, they had to see through the fallacy that the earth was flat and that they would fall off the edge to be devoured by monsters. We are subject to similar illusions, ones that block our manifestation of a better world. Like the explorers, we have to get over our fear of falling off the edge. I'm going to read through today's affirmation once, and then I'll invite you to stand and join me. I say yes to a world that works for all, free of fear and anchored in faith. I walk boldly forward in love, accepting myself and others with an open heart. Please stand and join me with conviction. I say yes to a world that works for all, free of fear and anchored in faith. I walk boldly forward in love, accepting myself and others with an open heart. So, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been blamed for something that you didn't do? Have you ever been blamed for something you did do, but you don't want to be blamed for it? Has that ever happened to you? It has happened to me. How does it feel when you're blamed in that way? Icky. I saw somebody mouth, ouch. It's an ouch, right? It doesn't feel very good to have someone casting blame on us, whether we did it or not, right? Have you ever blamed anyone for anything? Oops. Whether they did it or not? How do you suppose someone feels being the target of your blame? Icky. Ouch. Small, unloved, separate, divided. All of the things that we feel when we are blamed. And we know what that experience is, don't we? So why do we do it? Why do we perpetuate on others that which we know is painful to us? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Now, we're talking this month, and next month actually as well, about creating a world that works for all, aren't we? And I don't know about you, but sometimes I place blame for the fact that the world doesn't work for everybody out there. Do you? How productive do you suppose that is? About as productive as it is for us to blame someone for leaving the bathroom towels on the floor or whatever the thing is, yes? It creates a sense of separation and duality. Now, is that a healing consciousness? No. Why do you suppose we do it anyway? You see, we have two ways we can go with this, creating a world that works for all. We can walk in guilt and blame, shame, fear, or we can walk in love. Which is the healing consciousness again? Let me think. But you know, there is a human part of me that wants to make people out there wrong, right? But if I walk in the consciousness of love, I can take responsibility for doing my part to create a world that works for all. As long as I'm blaming it on politics or this person or this group or these people, I don't have to take responsibility, right? And yet I am responsible. I am responsible for the condition of the world, and I am responsible for how I meet that condition. I am responsible for how I experience that condition, and I can meet it and experience it with blame, shame, and guilt, or I can meet and experience it with love, which we already established as the healing consciousness, didn't we? As Mr. Abdullah told us in this morning's reading, you are the problem. I am the problem. But if I take responsibility for my part, suddenly I can become part of the healing consciousness. I can become part of the solution. So let's talk for a moment first about what exactly is the problem. The problem is the world doesn't work for everybody, right? That's a problem. It's less of a problem for you and me because it works pretty well for you and me, right? We have pretty much most of our needs met. We can get along. We can look out there, make other people wrong for what's going on, throw stuff at it, hope for the best. It's pretty easy for us to do that because here in our world, for most of us, I'm sure there are needs that we have that are not met, yes? But for most of us, we pretty much have what we need to get through life. So the world more or less does work for us. But if you'll remember back a few weeks ago, we talked in week 1 about the characteristics of a world that works for all, according to this author. According to this author, there are 3 main characteristics of a world that works for everyone. And the first one is, who remembers? Oh. Enoughness. That is, everyone has enough. That doesn't mean everybody has the same amount, but everybody has enough. The basic human needs of everyone are met. Everybody has enough food, everybody has shelter, everybody has water, everybody has enough to be a starting place with which to live a bigger life. That's the first characteristic of a world that works for all. The second characteristic is, I'll just give it another try. What is the second characteristic? Trade places, exchangeability. That's right. The term Sharif Abdullah uses for it is exchangeability. Am I willing to trade places with anybody else in the world? Not that I have to trade places with them, but would I be willing to? Without feeling punished, without feeling oppressed. And it may not be my first choice, but I know that I could create something from that life if I exchanged places with someone. And I don't know about you, but in our current world, exchangeability, I can think of lots of people I don't want to trade places with because of the conditions of their living and because of the options that they have or don't have. So the second characteristic is exchangeability. And the third one? Common benefit. That is, the system works to benefit everyone, not just a few. The system is structured such that everyone benefits. Once again, not necessarily in equal ways, because we're human and we have different needs and different cultures and all of that. So not necessarily in equal ways, but the system is set up so that everybody gets at least some benefit. Yes? So that is what Sharif Abdullah says are the three main characteristics of a world that works for all. Now, I may not want to trade places with someone, with some people. I may be able to see that the system currently does not work for the benefit of all. I may be able to see that there is not enough for at least some people. But how does that make me the problem? I'm not the problem. Isn't it them that's the problem? Well, who is them? Who is they? It's us. You know, there is a collective consciousness with which we move in the world. There is a collective cultural consciousness with which we move, and we make collective decisions from that place. And the bottom line is, according to Abdullah, and I agree with him, nobody really is the problem, because no one person has total control. Right? Have you ever played that game? You know, if I could do anything I wanted for the world, what would I, well, I'd make sure everybody had enough food. I'd make sure, those things. But the truth is, I don't have the power to do that. And the fact is, no one person has the power to do that. So the bottom line really is that nobody is the problem. Everybody is the problem. And we all have our little corner of the problem. And as we take responsibility for our little corner of the problem, a world that doesn't work for everyone, we can move into creating a different experience of life. Consciousness created the problem. Consciousness will heal the problem. As we take responsibility, grow in loving consciousness, healing takes place. And that's why this is a spiritual problem. Yes, it is a worldly problem. That people are having an experience of life out there where they don't have the options and the benefits that most of us have. So it is a worldly problem, but the resolution to the problem is a resolution in consciousness. It's a healing consciousness. And so I want to invite you into taking responsibility for your own consciousness, because consciousness is cause, and then we see how that outpictures in the world. We begin to behave differently, and we become part of the healing, the resolution of the problem. Fundamental change requires that we do three things. Ready? The first thing we must do is grow in consciousness. That's where it all starts. Consciousness created the problem. Consciousness can heal the problem, but the same consciousness that created it can't heal it. An expanded consciousness is what's going to heal it. And so we must take responsibility for growing our own consciousness. This is part of taking responsibility for the problem. The second thing we must do is practice compassion. Anchoring in love, ensuring that we are operating from a loving consciousness. And then the final thing is that, from that place, we can suddenly find ourselves able to take positive action in the world with a consciousness of love and compassion. What we keep trying to do is legislate solutions, right? What we keep trying to do is war about solutions. What we keep trying to do is take action in the world that is based in the old consciousness of separation and division and duality. But if we can move into a new consciousness of oneness and unity and love, we can begin to take a different kind of action in the world. And healing happens. So let's talk in a little more detail about growing in consciousness, practicing compassion, and taking positive action. The first thing I want to talk about is, what is consciousness? We throw that word around a lot in our teaching, don't we? What is consciousness? Self-awareness? It's something we all have. The dictionary says it's the state of being awake. The state of being aware. The state of being awake. Now, the truth is, we all woke up this morning, And we moved from a state of sleep consciousness to a state of awake consciousness, right? So we're more awake than we were, 6 hours ago or whenever we got out of bed. But are we fully awake? Are we fully awake? If we were fully awake, we wouldn't have the problem, would we? So there's work to do to wake up. And what is our mission? We are awakening people to their spiritual nature. We are here to wake ourselves and others up to the spiritual truth of us. And it's a process. Waking, when I wake up in the morning, I start to become a little conscious. I kind of, I feel the cat over here. I kind of see if Patty's still there. Sometimes I wake up a little, I look at the clock and I go back. It's a process, right? Waking up is a process. It takes time. And let me say this to you, and I say this to me all the time. No matter how awake I think I am more asleep than awake. If you think you're awake, it's kind of a demonstration of how not awake we are when we think we're awake. You know what I'm saying? I am more asleep than awake, but I am more awake now than I was last year. And I'm more awake last year than I was 10 years ago and 20 years ago. You can't believe how asleep I was in my 20s. I was seriously asleep. Anybody else? Like so not awake. And I look back and I realize how blessed I am to be on this conscious spiritual journey now. And how much more awake I am. And if I can be that much more awake now than I was 20 years ago, what can I be in 20 years? Wow! The potential, right? I was with family yesterday, and my sister-in-law said, have you ever thought that maybe, there's some greater kind of a thing, and we're just their little toy? And I had this image of an ant farm and a little kid poking the ants in an ant farm. Is it? Yeah. And I just kind of think, maybe we're just like some cosmic deity's ant farm and they're playing with us. Maybe, I don't know. But maybe that thing we call God is just, is something that is playing with us. And I don't know. But the fact is, I can guarantee you that wherever we are in consciousness, there is something so far beyond us we cannot even imagine. There is something so far beyond us as we are beyond the ant. That's how much waking up we have to do. I'm excited about it. Are you? The potential is endless, limitless. And so consciousness is simply the state of being awake, and yet waking up is a process, and we are waking up to the infinite self-knowing mind. One of the shorthand words we use for it is God. We are waking up to the presence and the intelligence and the wisdom and the joy of God. And if I could imagine myself walking in that intelligence and that joy and that wisdom, I can see myself operating very differently in the world. Can you? Rather than walking in my kind of human experience of fear and lack and not enough, I might share a little more, yeah? I might serve a little more. So I begin to wake up to a consciousness of unity and oneness, and the awareness that because there is only one thing happening, what I do makes a difference. Everything I do, everything I am, everything I think, everything I believe makes a difference in the mind and the body of God, and that's what we're having our being in, right? God's ant farm. So I want to begin to resonate with that larger vibration of love, that larger vibration of truth, that larger vibration that there is something so far beyond me as I am beyond an ant. And from that place, I can see a possibility of a world that works for all. So we grow in consciousness. And we begin to make different decisions. The second thing I said we need to do is practice compassion. Now, when we were talking about the Brené Brown book, Gifts of Imperfection, last month, we talked about compassion in depth, right? You remember? Compassion. The Latin root word for compassion means, yeah, I know, to suffer with. To suffer with. When I am engaging in compassion for you, I can feel into what it means to be in your experience of life. I can imagine what it's like to be where you are, having your experience. I can suffer with you and not try and fix you and not try and make it okay with you, for you, and not try and make you wrong for your experience. I can just be present to it. And so the second way that we can really affect lasting change is to practice compassion. Abdullah says, what catalyzes deep change is an appeal to the heart. Compassion is the most potent force for change. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I see hard things, I'm not willing to suffer with it. Yes? I'm not willing to feel what the people in that condition might be feeling because it's hard to be there. And I have my nice, comfortable home, and I have my full refrigerator, and I have my friends, and I have my church, and I have my life that works for me. So it can feel challenging for me to want to be present to the suffering of those who don't have enough. Yes? And I mean, I'm not encouraging us to just like fling ourselves into the depths because we also want to maintain our good mental health, right? And so we do have to be careful and ensure that we're engaging in self-care at the same time that we are imagining what life might be like for the other, for those that we believe we are separate from. But the more that we practice compassion, the more a potent force for change we can become. I hated to think about this. Abdullah said in the book, he says, denial is a key element of exclusivity. If I can deny your experience of life, I exclude you. In fact, I exclude you so I can continue to deny it. Make sense? I don't want to include you because I want to be in denial about the experience, the reality of your life. Denial, he says, is a key element of exclusivity. That is, we make them the problem. Are you noticing this happening in our culture anywhere? Who's the problem? Don't get me started, you guys. One of the examples Abdullah talks about in the book, though, is our gas culture, gasoline culture. Does that make sense? That we deny the impact that we have in the world. Just the very fact, I mean, I drove here this morning, right? Most of you probably got here in cars, or even if you came on the bus, you benefited from some of the ways we are in the world that doesn't benefit everyone. We all did. That makes us the problem. But remember, we're not blame, shame, guilting ourselves. Do you get that? What we're doing is acknowledging the fact that I used gas to get here this morning, and not only that, I shopped around and I bought the cheapest gas I could find. Do you do that? How do you suppose gasoline can be so cheap for us? Do you know what gasoline costs in Europe and Great Britain? And it's cheap for us because the people who provide it to us cut corners to make it cheaper for us. Single hole tankers, drilling in places that are, and in ways that are maybe not best for the planet or for indigenous people. And we make those decisions every time I put that pump in my car. I am saying, yes, I support the cheapest gas I can get. I support that. And no, I'm not willing to pay 20 cents or $5 more a gallon to ensure that oil is transported in double hull tankers, to ensure that we get gasoline in responsible ways, to ensure that in the meantime, research and development is happening for more sustainable fuels. I do the same thing in the grocery store, right? Do you? I get the imported food, not the local food. My sister-in-law did a local, she bought all local food. She made a 6-month commitment that she was feeding her family nothing but local food for 6 months. It was really hard to do. And she said her grocery bill totally shot up. It was really difficult. But you see, we make the choice. We say that having affordable grapes from Chile is more important to us than sustaining the local agriculture and eating things in season and all of that. Does that make sense? And so these are the ways in which we are the problem and in which we don't engage our compassion to understand how do these everyday decisions that I make impact the world. So we grow in consciousness. We grow in our awareness of love and unity and oneness, and we begin to realize more and more fully all the time that these decisions that I make impact the world. And I make it. If it was just me, it wouldn't be a big deal, right? But it's millions of people making these choices. We are the problem. And we are not the problem. Nobody is the problem because nobody's in control. See, I can choose not to buy those grapes from Chile, but it doesn't matter if I choose that. Does that make sense? If 1 million people choose that, then maybe we start to make a difference. So we grow in our conscious awareness. And remember the idea that consciousness, it raises all boats. As we grow, those around us grow. As we begin to make different choices, you've seen cultural change. What happened with drunk driving in the last 30 years? When I was a kid, my mother used to fix a cocktail to go in the car with us when we went places. Right? It was just a thing. Everybody did it. Everybody, we had people over to our house. There was a lot of drinking went on, and people got in their cars and drove home. And the night that one of my mom's friends, he drove his car into a ditch about 6 blocks down the road, and we got in a car to go get him. It's like, but some people began to grow in consciousness about something that was harming, that was harmful, that was creating a world that didn't work for some people. And people began to grow in consciousness about it. They began to engage at a deeper, compassionate level. And over the last 30 or 40 years, our culture has completely changed around drinking and driving, yes? We can do that. That's just people who grew up a little and made some new decisions and made the world a better place. You can do that too. You can grow in consciousness a little bit, make some new decisions, and make the world a better place. You see, we don't have the luxury anymore of blaming others. We've filled the planet. We don't have any more expansion we can do, right? We have to make a change. And that fundamental change comes from growing in consciousness, aligning ourselves with the infinite mind, the infinite presence, practicing compassion, and then from that place, we can, number 3, begin to take more positive action. So how will you take more positive action? Number 1, to grow in spiritual consciousness, you're in the right place. Now, we're not the only place. There are other places like us where you can grow in spiritual consciousness, and there's other activities you can do. You can go to yoga, you can take meditation class, you can take our summer class here that's coming up, you can join a small group. All of these things will support you in growing in consciousness. Do you see how you begin to take action in the world that is going to make a positive difference? And do you notice it doesn't start out there, it starts in here. Take action in the world to grow in spiritual consciousness. You can read, you can study. And I invite you to recognize that even that is a luxury in some ways, right? We can take a class because we have enough to eat. We can come to church because we have a car or access to a bus. We can engage, we can take a yoga class because we have the financial resources to do that. Do you see how even that is a luxury, right? And I'm not saying that people who don't have their basic needs met don't have spiritual lives. What I'm saying is that it becomes almost a privilege to be able to devote time and energy and money to spiritual growth and consciousness development. We're so blessed to have this community to come to. We're so blessed to have all of the offerings in the Pacific Northwest that we do to learn and grow in consciousness, yes? And we begin to practice compassion. Now, I don't know if you've noticed your Activate card that has been in your bulletin all month, yes? Here is a great way for us to expand, to grow, to begin to practice more compassion. On the side of your card that says recommended reading, affirmative prayer, and spiritual practice, under spiritual practice, stop often, many times a day, to truly see someone in front of you. Particularly seek out those who are different from you. Then ask yourself, would I be willing to trade places with this person? Begin to wonder why you would or wouldn't want to trade. Silently bless the soul of each person you do this exercise with, and thank them for the wisdom that they have given you. Now, I have to say, I look around this room and I see some people and I think, would I be willing to trade places with that person's circumstance? And I think for the most part, most people in this room, your circumstances and my circumstances, I'd trade places with you. That's pretty good. I wouldn't feel punished or oppressed. But there's a guy who stands outside the Costco that I go to down at South Center. And he's there almost every day. And he's panhandling. And he's at the exit of the store. And I see people, they stop, they give him food. Some people give him money. They give him food from the Costco place, where you buy, Costco dogs and stuff. And I just think, I was driving out of there the other day, I was like, would I be willing to trade places with him and not feel punished or oppressed? No, I got no exchangeability there. That's not a fun life. And so I blessed him and I thanked him for the wisdom. And I began to ask myself, can I really suffer with this person? Can I imagine what his life is like and be present to what that might be? Knowing that I don't really know. But I can begin to imagine because I see his clothes, I see his backpack, I see his age. I believe he has some kind of cognitive disability. I wouldn't want to trade places with him. And so what is my call to be present to him and his needs and engage in practicing who I am in the world in a way that might serve someone like him? There's a beautiful compassion-building exercise that is similar to this, but it goes like this. Find someone, just look around you, notice who's near you, and say this to yourself. Just like me, this person is seeking happiness and fulfillment. Just like me, this person has experienced heartbreak and loss and sadness. Just like me, this person is trying to avoid suffering. Just like me, this person is waking up. This person is learning and growing. This person is expanding in consciousness, just like me. We begin to take that kind of action in the world, and we develop a new consciousness, a new awareness. That creating a world that works for all is easy. We just have to be willing to be present to the power of love to heal. So let's turn within and practice a little bit. That healing consciousness. We agreed very early on in this talk that the that the love consciousness is the consciousness that heals, right? And so what I want to invite you to do right now is to turn within and take the sacred breath with me. And to begin to wake up a little more by searching your own heart. Where are you casting blame? Who are you blaming for the challenges and troubles of your life? Who are you blaming for the challenges and the troubles of the world? Who do you deride? Who do you sneer at? Sometimes it's individuals, sometimes it's people in your lives, sometimes it's politicians, sometimes it's institutions. Who or what are you blaming for the fact of things? And whoever or whatever that might be, I invite you to simply hold an image of that person or that thing in mind and to begin to see them with a consciousness of love. Just try, just a little bit, to open your heart and to say to this person, this thing, just like me, you are waking up. Just like me, you make mistakes. Just like me, you are trying to avoid the pains of life. Just like me, you are seeking nothing but happiness and fulfillment. And as you begin to embody this consciousness of oneness and unity, just begin to see this person with new eyes, this experience with spiritual sight. As you begin to recognize, just like me, I am one with the infinite, I am one with all there is. I cannot be separate from this person, from this thing. I cannot be separate from anything, for I am created in the image and likeness of the infinite divine. There is only one thing happening, one world, one essence, one presence. And we are all alive in this body of God, this body of oneness, this body of unity. And so you simply begin to feel love. Love for yourself, love for this person. You allow that feeling of love, that light of love to bubble up from deep within you. The presence of God being the love that you are right here and right now. And as you leave this place this day, you know you take a different, new action in the world, for you have expanded in your conscious awareness of love. You have seen the other as you. You are willing to get a bigger idea. You are willing to embody a consciousness of oneness. You are willing to be present to the suffering of others and to your own suffering. And from that place, you are set free to be who you are and to be of service in the world by creating a world that works for all. And so breathing in and breathing out, know that you have been transformed by the renewing of your mind, that something wonderful is happening, that you are waking up more and more fully to the truth, that you are lifted and inspired by the companion, the infinite life that goes with you everywhere at all times. We are remembering who we are. And in the remembering lies love, lies peace, lies truth. And so I invite you to sing with me. I am remembering who I am.